and it should pop up. There we go. Eric Enge, welcome to the ROIinU Career Success Tips show. I'm so happy to have you here because I've known you forever. We were just talking about sailing. We've been sailing together. You've been a very frequent Newport Interactive marketing guest, speaker. I think last time we had you speak, I was actually dialing in from the Seychelles, and people were saying, like, what's that weird noise? It was like insects in the background, sort of chirping away, listening to all
Yeah.
the great SEO tips. And I was like, oh, shoot, I forgot to mute. One of those very pre COVID, very early Zoom experiences before everybody became an expert. But thank you so much for coming on. It's so great to see you.
Yeah, likewise, great to see you and great to catch up and talk about sailing as we just were. But thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you have time now in your quasi retirement. Although you just mentioned that we do have to stay on schedule because you have a big client call coming up this afternoon. So tell me a little bit about, we chatted before a little bit about your background, and I'm just curious if maybe we start now with the types of clients who you'd like to work with or tend to work with, and then maybe work backward because you have a great history as one of the do I dare say founding fathers of white hat SEO?
I'll let you use that phrase, but I'm a proponent of white hat SEO for a long time, for sure. Been very passionate about it, doing it the right way. There's no need to do it any other way. And besides which, have a focus on working with large brands or companies that are trying to build something of great size, and you just can't take certain kinds of risks, when that's your focus. If you don't mind churning and burning websites, then there's a whole nother conversation that we could have about how to do all that. Um, but as you mentioned, I've been doing SEO for a long time, 20 plus years, and um, really had, I think, a fair amount of success. Built and sold four different companies that were all oriented around SEO. Um, the last of those was Stone Temple Consulting, which was sold to a company called Proficient in July of 2018. And as of July 2021, my 3-year contract with them was up, and I sailed off into the wild blue yonder. That's two analogies put together really badly, but that's beside the point. Um, and I'm semi-retired, as you say. I'm doing a little bit of client work, but working not full time, and putting other time into more charitable projects and things like woodworking, which is something else I'm dabbling in.
You
So there
know,
was a quick
it's
ramble for you.
oh yeah, no, it's very funny. I did some research for a client on woodworkers and how many technologists are into woodworking. And it's just interesting. It's sort of, something that's so non-tactile that the flip side, right? It's like a right brain, left brain thing. And I'm the same way with gardening and like knitting and all these things that
Right.
you still get to use your hands, but you're just using a totally different part of your brain, which is relaxing.
Yeah, well, I mean, to build something with your hands is very different than helping a Fortune 100 company, grow traffic to their website. They're somewhat different kinds of activities, and I just kind of need some of that in my life at this point. Because I spent 30 plus years of my career working 60-hour weeks, so
Yeah,
that's done.
definitely much deserved. Now, Stone Temple, before Proficient bought it, how many people did you have on staff?
We are about 70 at the time of the sale.
Wow, that's impressive. And that, compared to other that's a good size agency. And you specifically specialize in SEO, or did you do other digital marketing areas as well?
The other major area that we were involved in was content marketing, albeit a pretty large percentage of that was focused around helping drive SEO.
Hmm.
So there's obviously a very strong link there. And so that was a pretty hefty component of the business as well.
Definitely, definitely. And so content mark. So Let's unpack SEO a little bit, right? It's search engine optimization, what I would call getting found on Google. And you would know all about that because you are co author of The Art of SEO, which I would say was like one of the fundamental books that came out about SEO and was really a guide and really interesting. Some great co authors on that. Can you tell us a little bit more about Art of SEO?
Sure. So first published, you made me look it up before the show, in November 2009. Had three editions so far. The last one, however, was 2015.
Wow.
So there is a fourth edition in development. The authors have gotten back together to bring that forward. But really, what it is a um, almost an everything you ever wanted to know about SEO, but were afraid to ask kind of book. Goes deep into obviously all the technical stuff, but it really starts with a background of what search is about and how you should think about it and what search engine you're trying to accomplish and what you should try to do as a business. uh, Big chapter on keyword research. Again, the big tech SEO chapter is actually 200 pages almost of the 900-page book that the art of SEO is today. But it also talks about content marketing and analytics and site migrations and future of SEO, a lot of topics. It's a very broad and deep piece of work, actually.
That's really fantastic. And is there one particular area that you specialized in?
Yeah, it's a very strange thing to ask me of all people because almost everybody specializes in something, and I advise strongly to people in their career that they think about doing that. But I've sort of shifted my specializations through the years, and tend to carry a few of them, if you will, largely because I'm a voracious student of like everything,
Mm-hmm.
and um, a true geek, if you will. Like today, I'm really big into the machine learning side of things. I'm also diving deeply into the JavaScript side of things, and then I have my own model for how you can use breadth and depth of content to drive sites to great heights, I hope. I tend to be involved in many things at once. So I specialize in a few things. Is that fair?
Yes, fair enough. But I think at this point in digital marketing, especially when you've been in it for decades, you tend to know a lot, at least a fair amount about everything because you have to understand how it all knits together.
Right.
And I just wanted to mention that content marketing, or let me ask you, how do you define content marketing
Oh, well, let's see.
or
Should I
content
type that
strategy?
into Google really quick? No. Uh, so it, you could take, if we take a fairly broad definition of it, you could say it's, everything you do with content because all of your content has a target audience, and you could be a B2B player that has 100 potential customers, and you're working with 10 of them, and the audience is small. You could be a massive site like Amazon, which people don't necessarily think of Amazon as doing content marketing, but in a way they do, because all that people bought this also bought kind of stuff, which is driven by a type of machine learning called a recommender system. Is actually a form of content marketing in terms of itself, but a bit narrower definition. I think we talk about it about using content to build your brand, and that's I think how most people think about it, and it's really impactful from an SEO perspective because it can help you get a great deal of visibility within Google, which certainly can help build your brand. And then if you create the right kind of content, you can get other people in the industry and bloggers and media and influencers to share it and cover it and write about it and link to it and all those good things.
Yeah, fantastic. And what about, do you consider social media, does that fall under the context of content marketing, or are those two different, vastly different things?
It can. I tend to put that one in its own bucket, but I mean, your question is a really fair one because I mean, obviously, you're putting content out, and what you're choosing to publish there is very much a part of that broader strategy. The thing I find with social media that so many companies struggle with, and really people, is when you invest your time in that platform, what's the realistic expectation of what you're going to get out of it, and how does that relate to some sort of ROI for you? Um, and that's just a not easy question to answer,
Mm,
actually, because the number of brands who are going to use it to directly drive their sales is a small percentage. And by the way, some people, highly visual brands or things that are highly shareable in terms of what they do, get great ROI, the direct monetary sense from sales off of social media. But that's not it or the game for most people on social.
sure. Yeah, especially if you have something, like you said, that's not a visual, or there's not a great visual to a company, that it makes it really hard because most of social is
Right.
so visually driven. Yeah, interesting. So I'm curious too, if you, when we talk about ROI, right, can you just explain a little bit about how SEO is, you can draw that line a little more directly and understand what the ROI is on SEO?
Well, yeah, you like asking complicated questions. It should be a simple question, but SEO makes it hard. And so let me actually first talk about it a little bit from a paid media perspective so I can talk about how it's different.
Perfect.
So paid media, kind of the idea is, in fact, I'll make it paid search. I spend $1,000 on um, Google Ads today. I get $5,000 in sales with $2,000 of margin on those sales. And I can, depending on how you prefer to calculate ROI, if we just use simple ROI, I have $2,000 in sales and $1,000 margin on
Mm-hmm.
$1,000 of spend, 2 to 1 ROI. Okay, got that. So there's really this very direct cause and effect that allows you to calculate the ROI in a way that's simple. With SEO, it's not simple because it's let's invest. Let's say we're a small company and we invest $30,000 in SEO this year. That's a lot of money for some companies, by the way, but certainly there's a class of companies that can comfortably spend something like that. So you spend $30,000 in SEO. It's like, okay, I can measure how many conversions I get off of my website during that same year
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, I got $200,000 in sales with $40,000 of margin. And you can say, okay, my ROI is 40,000 over 30,000. And, it doesn't look so good. But the reality is the 30,000 you invested has somewhat influenced this year, but it's also going to influence the next year and the next year and the next year, even if you don't spend anything more. So it gets complicated. So without using up all the time we have on the show for this
Which we could
question,
easily do.
the simplest thing or the main thing I would want the listeners to get is that it's takes some thought to do a good job of calculating what your actual ROI is from SEO, and it's because the time frame in which you earn the investment
Mm-hmm.
is divorced from the time frame in which you make the investment. And in the meantime, you're making more investments, and so it gets complicated.
Well, this is an interesting. So I have an analogy that I think might be helpful, and we talk about this a lot about investing for retirement. When you're starting your career, right? You start investing, 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 and it builds up over time, and that would be organic SEO, right? Like
Right,
you're creating content, you're building links, you're doing that, and that's going to grow over time. But then paid advertising, or what's PPC, is more like day trading, right? Like you're
yep,
seeing in the time frame that you've set, okay, we sold this many jackets. This is what we can this is what we spent, this is what we made. Boom, you're done.
right.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to jump in because you have not only so much experience with SEO, but about how many people do you think you've hired in the four companies you've owned and in your career and having been CEO of many companies?
Yeah, maybe a couple hundred,
Yeah.
somewhere along
Okay.
those lines, between pre-SEO careers and SEO careers.
Yeah. So I'm just curious what tips of, and also Stone Temple had a program. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the program Stone Temple had hiring recent grads. And I was just looking at the notes that you would typically hire students who were graduating, and you'd hire them like April, May. So even before they graduated, they would know they had a job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was actually a really important program for us. We loved, first of all, it's just great to be able to help someone get a good start early in their career. And it's something that we were committed to and really wanted to do. And but it got us just such fantastic results. And as you said, Suzanne, we would reach out and to schools and interview people and hire them in the April May timeframe, sometimes a little earlier. Um, and then they knew they had a job when they graduated. And the reason why we did it is, in addition to just helping people early in their career, turned out to be extremely effective. We had so many rock stars that we were succeeded in hiring and whose careers were originally developed and built within the walls of Stone Temple. It was very gratifying, both from the point of view of actually the ROI we got on doing that, but also, helping their careers get started. And to be sure, we had a couple of people along the way that just didn't work out, and they didn't actually understand. There was actually, I'm going to approach this topic with a little bit of care. It was like, all the things, negative things that people say about millennials' work ethic. Well, first of all, it's total BS because it did not show in our hiring experience.
Hmm.
But once in a while, you got someone who like matched up with what people were saying. It was just, they didn't get that you were expected to like actually work in order to get the paycheck you were being paid. And it was like kind of a deal you made, and you had an obligation. And, so that happened, but it was comparatively rare. It was a great program for us.
That's so fantastic. And then what did you expect, or what would you want students to know coming in as a recent grad and working at Stone Temple?
So I think, um, well, there's a few things I would say. And one is you just really have to be prepared to be on a rapid learning curve. Um, it's just the way it's going to be, wherever you go in your career. And also, it's just you have to come in with that sense of commitment. It's like, um, you know, when you've gotten out of college, it may be, you've had a lot of things done for you in your life. And now you're at a point where you need to be very focused on understanding what it means to put your effort out to add value to someone else, in this case, the business. And embracing that early on is the critical difference between a fast start to your career and a slow start. And for many of you who are listening, that may seem obvious, but But the more you make it obvious that you feel that way as you engage in the beginning of your new job, the faster returns will come for you.
That's fantastic. I'm just curious too if you were looking for students who had a basic understanding of SEO or social media or good writing skills. What were you looking for?
Actually, not enough people were being taught SEO, so we weren't really looking for that. We were just
Hmm.
looking for people who had um, largely marketing oriented degrees, but some level of technical aptitude. So they wouldn't get frightened if someone mentioned the word JavaScript, for example.
Okay.
So they might not go run off and code any JavaScript. You didn't need them to do that, but it just couldn't be terrified of it. And, ways you can measure that is like how good are they with spreadsheets, for example,
Hmm.
because there's a certain logic pattern of working through a good spreadsheet, and if they're able to do that, then they can probably be logical about other things.
Wow, that's really cool. So, what would you look for with being handy with a spreadsheet? Whether would it be like Excel certification or?
Well, an Excel certification would certainly be a plus, but I don't think most kids coming out of school have that per se.
Hmm.
But just you know, what you could do is just talk to them a little bit about some of the projects that they'd done and what they had done with Excel,
Hmm.
and that's how we would typically approach it. And it's not so much that you're expecting them to say they got to say these three things to qualify. It wasn't really that. It's like of the 50 interesting things they might say, do they mention a few of them that shows that they did a little more than added a column of numbers?
Cool. Yeah. What about portfolios? Would you expect to see any portfolios or examples of work? What
Uh,
might those look like?
yeah, no, great question, because it leads to another part of this, which is so important. When you're going out for that job interview, you have to differentiate, because first of all, when somebody sees your cover letter and then they see your resume, you know, they may have 100 of these. It may literally be 100, and in some cases, it could be considerably more, right? But just assume it's 100. That's a lot, It's like, and they're going to pick, maybe five to talk to, right?
Right.
How do you get to be one of those five? And somehow on that paper and what you submit, you need to provide them with things that, basically, without doing it this way, literally say, pick me, right? So,
Sure.
and the portfolio is a great way of doing that. Or, you know, and, the nature of how you're submitting yourself for the job might not allow for literally including the portfolio with that, but you can reference it in your cover letter. And you can talk about things like, have you invested your own time on a project that you just did to learn about something? Have you done any unpaid internships or paid internships? Even either is fine. Um, and certainly your school projects are good to talk about too. Just know that the other resumes are going to have their school projects on them too. So the things you can do to have those extra pieces. And by the way, if you didn't do this in school, um, don't worry about that. It just go start something tomorrow or today, right? Sign up for your Excel certification. Go take that Excel certification. Just sign up for it, and then from there on forward, on every cover letter you send out, you can reference that you're pursuing an Excel certification. That shows your effort and commitment to your career and your understanding of your need to add value.
That's a really great tip. What about, are there any other resources that may be more SEO related or digital marketing related that you would recommend they pursue besides reading The Art of SEO? But I'm just thinking 900 pages might be a tall order.
Yes, 900 pages. Usually, when I handed it out to somebody, like in a meeting, I'd say, "Okay, 900 pages, quiz tomorrow." Uh, I could give them a little bit of a challenge, but um, anyway, yeah. So, um, in the world of SEO, I mean, you got to find the people who really are quite sharp and share good information, and are generous for their time that way. And there's really a number of people, and please understand they're all working as consultants or at agencies or like, so they of course are trying to promote their businesses, and that's part of why they're doing it. Good content marketing, by the way.
Yes.
But I'm thinking Glenn Gabe, Lily Ray, is another one. Let's see, I'm forgetting people. And you can search engine land is good. Oh, Barry
Hmm.
Schwartz, of course. Subscribe to everything that Barry does,
That's awesome.
because it's just a
Hmm.
wealth of information flowing at you. Um, and then follow the prominent Googlers that talk to webmasters on Twitter. Gary Eish, whose handle is Methode, and then John Mueller, whose handle is Johmu. For a start, Martin Split is another one. What's his? Oh, I can't remember right now. Um,
That's okay. We can
um,
add it.
yeah, you can add it to the show notes.
Yeah.
But those are good people to follow. And a lot of it might seem a little confusing at first, but you just gotta there's so much detail in SEO. You gotta learn your way through a bunch of it. And then Search Engine Land is a great site to leverage for information. Search Engine Journal is another one. Um, I'm not starting a new blog at this point in my career. I'm actually going to be doing my writing on Search Engine Land for now.
Great.
So,
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, we just have a couple minutes left, Eric, and this is so wonderful to get not only your SEO perspective, but also your hiring thoughts. And, I'm just wondering if you have maybe a tip for other agencies when it comes to working with recent grads.
yeah, great question as well. I think the main thing you need to do is you have to accept the fact that you're starting with raw material. And this is why a lot of people don't engage in hiring recent grads, because they want someone who has some experience. And it's like, but SEO is so much different kind of work. There's good things that you can find to help them be productive pretty quickly, that helps them start learning. So teach them how to do basic keyword research or basic analytics reports. How to just start them on projects like analyzing competitor and trying to find out what their content themes are. And they're going to need some hand holding and training and direction, but most of them come on pretty quickly. And honestly, in 6 months, you're going to start feeling like you're beginning to get a return on it. And that's not bad for a new hire, by the way, to say that it's only 6 months, because typically it's a year before you begin to think you're getting ROI.
That's a really great tip. What about any other tips for a recent grad or someone who's just thinking about getting into digital?
I guess the other thing, I mean, I already talked about differentiating, but find that part of it which just energizes you, right? I mean, you don't want this to be torture, right? I mean,
Yeah.
do your job every day. And make that area that your area of focus, and invest time in learning stuff like that and differentiating yourself there, so you're more likely to get work you like doing every day.
Then it's fun. Then 60 hours in a week is nothing, right?
You got it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Eric Enge. It was so great to see you again, and I'm really looking forward to going out sailing with you again, hopefully soon.
I'm looking forward to it as well. And thanks for having me on.
Thank you.